get those cottages in just for the heck of it.
Hey, who are those guys? Who's that guy with a Zermatt hat?
Zermatt. Something out there, right? That isn't the same.
Going out. That guy gonna pick up a lobster pot or just go around and look at the buoys? You can't find it.
September 5th.
Wait a minute now.
September 5th. It's Lincoln. Working.
Okay, it's going.
September 5th, 1990, of Gunquit Beach. We're waiting for Raj to get his feet wet. Oh my God.
Hi. taking any pictures.
Someday.
We'll have to go up top there and see what we can see. Who's this?
Me. Having a diet soda.
Well, isn't that good? You're sticking to your diet. You'll be skinny someday.
I'm trying.
That's where we ate last night. That's where we had breakfast this morning.
go, would you?
Who's that? Getting me up
I'm wide awake now.
in
I
the
wasn't last night.
crack of dawn.
Oh, it's the best time of day. Too many people come up to a place like this and don't see the
Yeah.
sunrise. To me, there's something about it. Sky lightning in the morning.
Definitely.
When you pan, you want to pan too fast. Your tickets for the boat ride, does it have to be on the sailboat? Doesn't it? How about that powerboat?
Oh, it's for the sailboat.
Yeah,
I'd
how about that
kind of like.
powerboat?
Well, the sailboat, it won't tip. I wouldn't worry about it. Why, are you worried about the
Well, I was
sailboat?
just wondering about the seating arrangement.
Oh, they got some. I think they'll have some comfortable seats. You want something with a backrest, you mean?
That was what's nice about that other thing. It's super comfortable.
Yeah.
I think I'll do it and warm up.
Yeah, me too. Huh? Nice and clear.
I didn't see it. Wait, you walked all around?
Yeah. Where's Roger? Well, today is September 8th, 1990, in Bar Harbor. And the sun's just come up. It's too bright to get very close to it. And there's our spot right there. That's Mom and Dad's room. That's Cynthia. My room, and that's Roger's room. And there's the moon. about 6:30 in the morning and very cool. Nice dry air coming through after a rainy, foggy day yesterday. It is? Yeah, it's about a 6-hour, 7-hour one way, and then come back around 10 tonight. And they missed it. That's to Nova Scotia. Well, maybe he's going north.
There it is.
What? What? I don't know. What do you mean? Film's all gone.
I got it there. Now I'm going to get it when it's in front of here.
Well, go get another film in your camera. You got time.
I got it. I got double of them, so I'll give one to Raj. I even got the other boat, too. I got it, Raj. And so is Daddy.
Good.
Leave it.
Oh, but I think it's been around a while.
that.
No, I have the extra one. Okay.
Why don't you take a picture?
This is a sailing vessel with moving parts, and we can't do without the parts I'm going to show you. These lines that Patrick and Sean are swinging back and forth, those are sheet lines. They trim and adjust the sail above them. Without those, you can't have a sailing vessel. So you want to be careful not to get up against those. Above all, you don't want to try walking where Patrick and Sean are standing. You could get hurt quite badly if you got hung up in those lines. There will be quite a strain going down through those. The safe place to walk from side to side on the deck is behind the orange life rafts, where Patrick is, or in between the forward two cabins where Orest is. Now, the Natalie Todd was originally built in 1941 as a commercial fishing vessel. She is a wooden vessel, and in her original configuration, she had two masts. The sail area was somewhat smaller than we have now, and they were used in conjunction with a diesel engine to haul a net over the ocean floor for ground fish. She was always an offshore vessel. She worked primarily on the Grand Banks and Georges Banks. For those of you not familiar with New England, that's off the New England coast and some of the prime fishing grounds in the North Atlantic. She'd go out on trips of about a week to 10 days, and she would fish year-round. She fished for over 40 years, from 1941 to 1985, and during that period of time, she was modernized quite a bit. They took the sailing rig off, put in a more powerful engine, and she finished up her fishing career strictly as a power dragger. Her earlier designation, she would have been called a schooner dragger because the fact that she dragged for fish as opposed to a dory fisherman, and also the schooner rig that she had. She was quite a successful vessel in her early years when she fished out of Rockland, Maine, from 1946 to 62. She did quite well. She could bring in up to 130,000 pounds of ice-down fish, and she did so well filling up on her trips that they built a larger vessel and replaced her, and she went down to Gloucester, Massachusetts. We got her down in Gloucester in 1986. Again, she'd been fishing right up till 1985, and thought she'd make an excellent candidate for a rebuild back into a sailing vessel. She had a sound hull. Her hull planking is white oak, or white oak frames. So we brought her up here to Maine, where we spent a year rebuilding her at the Wallace Shipyard down in Thomaston. We actually leased space down there, hired on a crew of wood shipwrights, and spent a year tearing her down to a bare shell. The hull was in good shape, but we took the entire deck off. That's what you're sitting on. and took all the machinery off the deck, gutted the inside out, and then started from the bare hull back up with new watertight bulkheads and deck frames, deck planking, and rails around the edge of the vessel, and deck houses. And most significantly, we put in this 3-masted gaff schooner rig that she has. That was to increase the sail area from what she had originally as a schooner dragger, and also to make the sail plan easier to handle by splitting up the sails into more manageable sizes. She's a real heavy vessel. She weighs almost 200 tons. When you walked up alongside her, as large as she looks to you, you're actually looking at less than half of the hull. More than half the hull is beneath the surface, and of course would only be seen when she's up on a marine railway, which is once a year for bottom painting and dry dock inspection. Now, wooden ship construction is quite different from house carpentry. If any of you are familiar with wooden boat construction, we do have some photos up in a display case at the end of the pier of not only the rebuilding in 86, 87, but we also have some original construction photos taken in 1941 with the Natalie Todd framed out with just the frames and the keel, and then another photo of her when she was launched. Basically, some of the big differences between wooden vessel construction and say house carpentry would be there's very few straight sections. Everything's either curved or beveled. Even things that look flat aren't. Say, for instance, the deck. There's a crown or curvature to the deck. Although it's slight, it's barely perceptible, but that's to enable the water to run off if any seas come on board. They run off under the scuppers on the rail there. The deck itself, that planking, every plank there has a bevel on it for caulking, and the entire vessel deck, sides, bottom, the trunk cabins were all caulked in a traditional manner with oakum and cotton. That's actually driven in with a mallet, a special wooden mallet, and an iron to not only make the hull and deck waterproof, but it also stiffens up the structure. Otherwise, you could just use like a compound, which we have seam compound over top of the oakum and cotton, but it's actually to strengthen the structure because it would otherwise be quite loose without caulking. Some earlier vessels, such as whaling vessels in the early 1800s, actually would caulk the inside planking on the vessel, which is sealing just to keep the cargo from getting in between the frames. They actually caulk that up to stiffen up the structure. Now, the Natalie Todd is traditionally rigged. Everything is operated by block and tackle. There are no electric winches or yacht winches, and most of the gear on board was custom made during the restoration a few years ago. Of course, as I mentioned, she did not have a sailing rig when she finished up her fishing career. You're more than welcome to look at all the gear as you walk around the deck. If you have any questions about its use, ask the crew, and they'll try to explain its function. Again, though, you do want to bear in mind that it is very heavy in keeping with the size and heft of the vessel. Up forward, we have some interesting ground tackle, those anchors up there. Those are all for real use. And up in the bow itself is a black iron mechanism called an anchor windlass. That's for raising and lowering those big anchors. The one on the starboard bow weighs 550 pounds. And during the restoration, we couldn't locate an existing windlass that was suitable for a vessel of this type, so we actually had to have one cast up for us. We did that in Lunenburg Foundry, Nova Scotia. They had patterns that dated to the turn of the century. They didn't actually go back to recreate all the stuff. It's just the foundry up there just never modernized and threw out all the old patterns, so they cast that up for us up there. And when you walk up forward, you may want to take a look at that. Now, partway through the trip, the First Mate Doug will be giving us discussion about the Frenchman's Bay region. He'll point out some things that we'll be able to see out there from a better vantage point in the bay, as well as discuss some of the wildlife that's native to the waters this time of year. He'll also go over some of the most frequently asked questions about the schooner, and afterwards, if you have any further questions, just feel free to ask the crew, and they'll do the best they can to assist you. Now, we're going to be giving you a life jacket demonstration that's required by the Coast Guard. We have to do that before every trip, and Aris is going to do that for us. The life jackets are located in the 4 white deck boxes, 2 on the port side and 2 on the starboard side amidships. Now, they're pretty simple. You just open them up and slip them over your head, pass the black strap around behind you, and snap it on the ring on front, and there's an adjustment there if you need it. Now, we'll go out into the outside the moorings, out through the channel, and raise our sails out there. When we do that, We customarily ask if any passengers want to participate in raising up all that sail. We usually have a number of people want to get more actively involved working the vessel. Now, this is certainly not required, and it's quite strenuous, but if anyone wants to help out, the crew will call for volunteers at the appropriate time and give you instructions on how to assist alongside of them. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start setting sail right now. Anyone that would like to give us a hand pulling the sails up, it's guaranteed to warm you up a little bit. Just stand up and let us know who you are. We're going to need 4 or 5 people at this mast right in front of me and 4 or 5 people at the next mast. If you don't get a chance on either one of you.
Something's still caught, Pat.
Get up.
Okay, if you'd like to get up and walk around the deck now, it's all clear. When you first stand up, though, take a good look around you at those lines. We've got a nice, good northerly breeze here. Those lines are going to be moving around whether you're in their way or not. So you do want to be careful. Remember, you are on a sailing vessel.
island that the bald eagle came from over here. Closest one to us on the port side is called Sheep Porcupine Island. They got its name because they used to keep sheep and goats out there to graze. It was a little easier than building fences and good protection from some of the natural predators that we have here in Maine, like coyotes. And actually at the time that they were doing that, the problem was with wolves. Straight off our bow, off on the port side, is Burnt Porcupine Island, and then we have Long Porcupine Island on the starboard bow. Over here on the starboard side, and a beam of us straight off is Long Porcupine Island. And just off to the right of that, you can see a string of rocks sticking up out of the water. That's called the breakwater. Dry Porcupine Ledge makes up the center part of that sticks up a little bit higher. That part is natural. The rest of it was built by the Corps of Engineers right around the turn of the century. They never completed it, so it does get covered up at high tide. These numbers that you hear the crew yelling back here to the wheel are the positions of lobster pot buoys. If you take 12 o'clock to be straight off the bow, and 9 o'clock to be straight off the port side, 3 o'clock to be straight off the starboard side, that's the angle to which the buoys are in relation to the boat, and they'll give us a distance. That way we don't drive over the top of them and pick them up in our propeller and end up ruining the lobsterman's ear. Now you notice that all these lobster pots have different colors on them. Each lobsterman has his own color that's registered with the state along with his fishing number, and that number is on the lobster trap down on the bottom, and it's on the buoy, and then the color is on the buoy, whatever pattern that happens to be. And he'll also have on his tab at top when he's driving around picking up his lobster traps, one of those buoys so that anyone coming along and seeing him lobstering will know that he's picking up his own traps and not someone else's. Now off here to the port side, we have a couple of mountains over there. Scoodic Mountain is the highest one off there in the distance. The brown top to it. Then off to the right of that is the Goldsboro Hills. Now, Scoodic Mountain is at the base of the Scoodic Peninsula. It runs all behind all these islands out in front of us, forms the eastern shore of Frenchman's Bay. And if you look just off to the right out here, you see a point sticking out with a water tower on it. That's the end of the peninsula. That's called Scoodic Point. That's part of Acadia National Park as well. Now, just to the right of that, you can see a long ledge with a higher section and a lighthouse on the top of it. That's Egg Rock Lighthouse sitting on top of Egg Rock. That lighthouse marks the entrance good-sized bald eagles. One word about bald eagles, if you see one of the young ones, there's quite a few of those out here. They're not going to have a white head and tail. They're going to look just like a bald eagle, an adult bald eagle, except without the white head and tail and the neck. Besides the bald eagle, you want to be looking for old squaw. Old squaw are a sea duck. They come into the area in the spring and the fall. And then we have also Arctic terns, common terns, eider ducks, guillemots. Guillemots are a very small bird. They're about the size of a common chicken. They're black in color and they have white wing bars on them. They're one of the few birds that actually swims underwater as well as flies with its wings. They're a relative of the penguin. As you know, penguins swim underwater with their wings, and these birds do the same thing. The difference is that they also fly with their wings. We have many cormorants out here, double-crested cormorants. They're the black birds with very long necks, rather look like a black goose, a little bit smaller than a Canadian goose, but all black in color. Now, these birds are kind of interesting because they have no oil glands. They're a member of the same family as loons, and they are a fishing bird. They can dive quite deeply. They've been caught accidentally in fishermen's nets as deep as 200 feet. Now, the reason they can dive that deep is they have no oil glands and they don't hold the air in their feathers. Your typical mallard duck will be able to maybe get to 20 feet down if he dives down hard. A cormorant on a regular basis will do 50 or 100 feet pretty easily. The problem with that is that when they come up to the surface, after they're saturated with all this water and no air pockets, they end up weighing too much to fly. So that's why you'll see them sitting out on the rocks, drying themselves off, trying to lose some weight so that they can get airborne again. Also, in the water, you want to keep your eyes open for harbor seals and harbor porpoises. Seals have a very dark-colored head. It's a little bit larger than a softball. They generally look like a dog, and small dog in the water with no ears. Harbor porpoises have a dark, shiny, triangular dorsal fin, and you'll see part of the back of their head and part of their back when they come up to the surface. A good way to spot them is to hear them. They do blow, just like a whale does. It's just a smaller blow, and it's not quite as loud, and it's not visible when they come to the surface because they don't expel quite as much air as a whale does. And if you listen for that and hear it then in a general direction, you want to watch in that general direction. And they'll probably be coming up again. They do about 3 or 4 surfacings to breathe, and then they'll do what's called a terminal dive, where they go a little deeper and go down fishing, or just generally moving along, whatever their business happens to be at that particular point. Now, there are still some mackerel running in the bay, so the seals and the porpoises are a little more active right now than at other times of the year because they're feeding on these mackerel. Now, there are a couple of questions that we have asked quite commonly about the boat itself. One of them is, does the boat go south? This vessel was built in New England, and it's been in New England waters all of its life. And the answer to that question is no, we don't take it south. The cold temperature of the water up here is very good for a wooden hull. Salt water that's very cold as it is up here in New England acts as a preservative. Now, if we were to take the vessel down to, say, the Caribbean, we would be in much warmer waters with higher humidity and more ultraviolet rays from the sun, just higher temperatures in general, and that tends to promote the growth of bacteria, which is what causes rot in a wooden structure. So we try to keep the vessel Um, Another question we hear quite a bit is, why do we have red sails? These sails are actually called tan bark sails by a sailor. They're not referred to as being red, and that word comes from a process that was used on cotton canvas natural fiber sails to preserve them. The way that worked was to boil down oak tree bark and get the tannic acid out of the bark and soak the sails in that solution. Tannic acid coming in contact with a white piece of natural fiber cloth turns it this red or brown color. And so the color was actually a byproduct of, was not necessarily an intended thing. Tan barking the sails kept the mildew and the mold away from the sails and kept them from rotting, and generally let them last a little bit longer. Now these sails are not cotton canvas, they're a synthetic fiber called dacron, and they are dyed red. Another question we hear quite often is, what are the little white strings hanging out of the sails in rows? Well, we have a perfect example of what those are used for right above my head here on this sail. You notice this sail above my head is not all the way up. We've got plenty of breeze out here, more than we need to get the boat up to her potential speed. So we have this sail shortened down by reefing it. That's what all those lines are called. They're called reef points. And you can see we tie those around the bottom of the sail here. Take that section of cloth out that's underneath of them so that it's not flying at this time. And that enables the boat to still sail just as fast as it would with everything up, but makes everything a little bit easier to handle and puts less strain on all the rig. Now, if you have any other questions about the area or the boat, please feel free to ask. And if you see something out here, you don't know what it is, just ask one of the crew or myself. We can probably identify it for you.
You don't take overnight or weekend.
There's another bald eagle right over here on the port side to the right of this island. It's a long porcupine island there. It's right up above the point. That is an adult. You can see the white head and tail pretty well in the sun when it turns the right way.
He had called a dealer in London who he'd been in contact with, and the dealer, I think, instantly convinced him that he must send the works immediately to London. The dealer had certain interests, realized that we had certain interests, and they were sent to London to be inventoried and appraised. And once that procedure was done, we were allowed the first access to go through the entire collection. That's when we saw it in London at Colnaghi's.
We had no idea the extent of the collection, and then when we walked into Michael Goodhouse's gallery, there were things that one's eyes picked up that we knew nothing about, that were complete surprises, that were just absolutely terrific. Couldn't stop looking. It was one of those things impossible to concentrate because there were so many terrific things lying about. It was great.
They were the first people to see it. They were the first people to be given an opportunity, an option to buy it, although the price still hadn't been fixed, although we gave them some idea of what it might be worth.
I was giving a paper in Oxford.